Good afternoon, good morning, or good evening, whenever you might be joining us. Welcome to the Richard Watkins podcast. It doesn't matter, see, if you are a morning bird or a night owl, both of which are birds. Listen, I'm just excited that you are here with us for another exciting installment of the Richard Watkins podcast. I am your humble host, Dr. Richard Watkins, and we've got an exciting show for you today. The Richard Watkins podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network. Listen, I know innovation is moving very, very fast. And if you're a business owner, if you are operating a nonprofit, for profit, if you're a government official, or if you're just trying to figure out the way the world works, it can be daunting, it can be challenging, but SPAN is here as your partner as you move forward with confidence into the future. Visit SPAN at span-inc.org. Again, that's span-inc.org. Today's episode is made possible by the kind folks over at All About You Realty. All About You Realty is a locally owned boutique brokerage serving the triad and beyond. Whether you're buying your first home, upgrading for more space, or preparing to sell, their team is committed to guiding you every step of the way. With expert agents across Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point, they combine trusted experience with a people first approach. Because at All About You Realty, it truly is all about you. So, without further ado, let's jump right into it. How do I tackle this particular question? This is an exciting episode because it's a discussion that I have been wanting to have for a while, and I don't know why it has taken so long to really kind of dive into it and really try to figure out exactly how we should discuss it. So, please forgive me if this comes out raw. We would love to hear your thoughts on today's topic, but I think we need to invent a term. And it's not every day that you are able to invent a term. So I want to do that today. And if there is already a term that is widely used to describe what we are about to discuss. Please forgive me, charge it to my head and not my heart. I do apologize. And if you call me out, put it in the comments. I'm happy to learn. But from my understanding, there is not a great term to describe this particular situation. So we've discussed in other episodes the importance of culture and traditions. We discussed it in painstaking detail. Um, and in conclusion, traditions are critical because it maintains the order. It is the fabric often of society, of communities. These traditions, this culture is just really, really important. But there is a reality that we as a society operate off of traditions, culture, and norm that are rooted and have their origins that date back centuries. Right. So that's the reality. There's nothing wrong with it. That's just the way it is. We are who we are because of the efforts, because of the faults and follies and accomplishments of generations before us. We don't always have that much input on the culture or the tradition, or the societal norms that we are born into. So we have to first start with there. And again, we addressed this in another episode, and I think it was that discussion that kind of made me really start thinking about this. And the nature of this podcast is to discuss the bleeding edge, to discuss philosophy, to have people thinking about a lot of things. The next the next piece I'd like to throw out there is this reality. And I believe I've said it before that the impact innovation, and what I mean by innovation, I mean innovation as like an umbrella term for all the advancements in a wide variety of fields, not just technology, not just health, right? Not just, education, but I mean innovation, right? Moving our understanding and moving practices and products and services, moving those first. So innovation as a general term. Innovation will have more impact on our society over the course of the next 10 years than it has had over the past 1,000 years. And I know that's a hot take, um, but it is our reality. We are reaching a like an acceleration ramp where we're getting innovations are coming quicker, quicker, and quicker. But therein lies a dilemma. We've got society that operates off of societal norms, culture, and tradition that are based in origins that are thousands of years old. But then we have a situation in which the impact that innovation will have on society will will be more over the course of the next 10 years than it has been over the past 1,000 years. So you have a a society that pretty much kind of operates, flatly, right? It's a plateau. It doesn't really do too much with change. There's always an effort to maintain what has been. That is a quality or just an observance of society. What rubs against that is the acceleration of innovation. So you've got society here and you've got innovation here. So the same society that is not really changing how it views itself, the things and values that are important to it, is operating in the context of innovation that is constantly changing and changing faster and faster. And that rub creates a scenario that I would like to refer or coin the term innovation, innovational friction, right? So that's the situation in which innovation is occurring increasingly more rapid while society is more or less stagnant. So you have cultural lag and an innovation, and that creates a friction that I would like to refer to as innovational friction. And we see it a lot because the way we interact with one another is being impacted by a lot of this innovation, and the way we think about things is being impacted by this innovation. And often we collectively we don't have the vocabulary to describe what is even happening or what we are experiencing and what we are sensing. And we are making decisions in regards to this innovation based off of how things should be or were. And it's a very difficult thing. Here is an example. Many states here in the United States and perhaps globally, I'd like to look into that. In fact, I probably will, and that will probably be a whole nother episode onto itself. Many states are making the decision with support that is across the board that smartphones should be removed from the classroom. So students are going into class and they have their phones, and I guess they are distracted. The relationship of the smartphone with the educational setting is one in which many folks are starting to question whether or not phones should be in the classroom at all. And that's a very interesting question, right? So it has pretty much been met with universal acceptance. From my understanding, when these decisions are made or suggested that phones should be removed from the classroom, and the actual policy and the actual practical application of the removal of those cell phones, removal of those smartphones from the classroom, it probably differs from state to state and from situation to situation, from school to school, or from school district to school district. But in general, it has been met with universal approval. But the question is it actually the right thing to do? That is the question. That is the question. Now, if we were going to look at the purpose of education, and if you ask individuals, what is the purpose of education? If you ask that question to 100 people, you might get 100 different answers. However, I would suggest that education, specifically K through 12 education, kindergarten through 12th grade, K through 12 education is more or less designed to equip children and young adults with the appropriate skill sets to allow them to be contributing and functioning members of our society. And it's really created to generate productive adults. So the educational situation, the educational setting is created to create adults, desired adults in that society. Right. And so that is what our educational system is. We want a certain type of adult. And so we subject our children to the rigors of education in order with the hopes to produce that adult. Now, I would have to ask this interesting question. So oftentimes you do stuff in the classroom because you will do this outside of the classroom when you're an adult. I think it's an interesting question to really kind of explore why students are using cell phones or smartphones in the classroom. And I think it is because the smartphone um, in the United States in the most part, in modern contemporary society, is ubiquitous with society. There are parents who are demanding that students not use smartphones in the classrooms are themselves using smartphones all the time. The same parent who would say the classroom is no place for a smartphone, would they themselves be distracted by the same smartphone during a board meeting, during a department meeting, at church? The same adult that says that children are distracted by smartphones, are they themselves distracted by a smartphone? I think it is interesting to kind of demand something of our children that we wouldn't demand of ourselves. If you go to a concert, a comedy show, you'll see people getting thrown out all the time because they have their smartphones out recording the concert or the comedy show. If you go to an airport, for example, you can't make it to your gate without maybe stepping over the legs of people at the airport, sitting on the ground, plugged into an outlet in the wall. They can't even move because they need their phones charged. The charging of that smartphone is so important. Sit on the floor. They don't want to move. They can't go anywhere unless that phone is charged. They might themselves feel a rumbling in their stomach, knowing that they need to go eat. But before they feed themselves, they charge their phones. Let me ask you, if you had plenty of time and you were about to go on a short road trip, maybe 2 hours, you get in your car, 30 minutes up the road, you realize, ooh, I left my phone back home. Chances are most of you would turn right around and go get the phone because you wouldn't want to face that destination or what you are to do on that destination without your phone. Maybe you won't even know how to get to the destination without your phone. Business deals are made over the phone. Many occupations, many businesses utilize social media that are accessed via applications on a phone, smartphone. So what what are we preparing our students for? If we are preparing students for society and every aspect of the society that we are preparing them for involves a smartphone, sometimes I wonder what the benefit truly is from removing phones from schools. Say, well, phones are a distraction. Well, that probably is true. But school is also boring, which is probably something that we have a hard time grappling with. When something is boring, it is easy to get distracted from something that is boring. And I've been involved with education for the vast majority of my life. It's not a knock to just make an observation. You ask, Most kids, they'll tell you now when they become adults, or if you ask the valedictorian or something like that, yeah, they'll tell you like, no, 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 school is amazing. But the vast majority of students are bored, disinterested at school, sitting at a desk, their attention focused on an adult telling them things. That's just a really interesting thing. That's just one observation. Another observation is how people meet each other. A lot of conversations are about how do people meet and how do people engage and whether or not it is good for society for so many interactions to occur digitally. That means through a device, an electronic device, not a phone, right? But just through a digital means, whether it's email, text message, right? When you hear individuals say that something is bad, it is oftentimes rooted in how things once were. The classroom, for example, the classroom once looked like this, and there is a desire to have the classroom return to some semblance of how it used to look. But that's that friction that I'm talking about, right? Innovation is occurring so rapidly that many folks just are not prepared for the downstream effects that it will have. And so there is a desire to shove the genie back into the bottle, but that will not happen. You cannot put that cat back into the bag at all. You can make attempts, but those attempts will they'll be hard to really even judge the implications of it, right? It'll be hard to judge the implications of it. It'll be hard. It'll be hard. Not knowing what's real and what's not, because the ability to generate images, to generate audio, to generate movies have gotten so good that to our eyes and to our ears, we can't determine what is and what isn't. And what is real in the first place. I mean, if you're not directly experiencing it, if you're experiencing it through literature, or if you're experiencing it through cinematography, if you're experiencing it through photography, I mean, what is real in the first place if you're not actually experiencing it? And I think the advancements of innovation, the advancements that we are experiencing are bringing everything that we thought we know to be true about ourselves into question. And it's also bringing everything that we thought we knew about our society and our community also into question. It's very hard to create policies. It's very hard to create decisions regarding the innovation and the rapid pace that it is taking place. That's taking place. It's very, very difficult. Very, very difficult to really even wrap our minds around all of this. What's privacy? Does privacy even exist anymore? No, it it doesn't, not the way we once thought it did. Because the way we communicate quite often through um, social media, right? And the term social media doesn't even mean the same thing it once used to mean, because you are able to engage with people through so many different ways now, right? So when people say social media, they are oftentimes referring to, you know, Facebook, Instagram, X, TikTok. But social media is much more than that. Social media is also YouTube. Social media are also video games. And well, yeah, let's just pause really quick and let's focus on like the increasing preference for, I don't want to say artificial because we need to have a conversation about what's real and artificial. I would suggest that everything that you perceive to be real is real. That perception aspect is key to it. If you perceive it to be real, then to you it is real, whether or not it actually happened or was artificially generated. That's the dilemma. Because when you perceive it and it feels real, you receive all of the consequences of that perceived reality being real. You feel all of it, right? Like when you are on a roller coaster, there is a perception of danger when you're on the roller coaster that is artificially generated through this ride. And the thrill is that your body is reacting as if it is going to perish, but it's not. It's an illusion created by this ride, this theme park ride. So, what is real? Well, real is whatever you perceive to be real. And I think that's a reality that is difficult for a lot of people to accept, especially again when innovation, technology, graphics generation, audio generation, artificially is indistinguishable from, recorded from somebody actually acting, actually photographing something, actually composing music. There's not going to be a difference in how you perceive it. And what does that mean? There's going to be so many implications. I mean, what if a crime is depicted? I mean, is it a crime if it was artificially generated? How will the laws be applied to that? How will restrictions even be applied to something that didn't actually happen, but is perceived as being real? Do our laws and policies and regulations have to now govern perceptions or things that will be perceived as being real as well? Possibly, probably. I have no idea. I mean, these are questions that we're going to have to answer. This is why that term innovational friction is coined. Also, how do we feel about longevity, right? This idea that innovation in regards to medicine, in regards to health, will allow people to live longer and longer and longer and longer. And if you have access to these technologies, if you have access to this innovation, one day could you live forever? And what does it mean for some people to have access to innovations that will allow them to live longer and longer and perhaps forever? And for those who don't, some people can live a long time while other people die earlier. What about cloning? Cloning is a technology that's existed forever, but it's one that kind of has been pushed to the periphery, something that we don't think about anymore. I mean, what does it mean for a person to be cloned? And if you're interacting with a clone, or what if I don't know, what if a public official or a president is cloned and their clone then grows up to be an adult, does that clone also get to run for president or get to hold public office or what? Does the clone of an individual have to answer to the crimes of the person that they were cloned from? These are not things that we are dealing with right now, but they are things that we could deal with because the technology exists. And I think the hard part about all of this is that as you approach these questions, you're approaching these questions looking at them through the lens of societal norms, looked at through the lens of values that are rooted in culture and tradition that are thousands of years old. That's going to be the difficult part of all of this. We are going to approach these situations and grappling with innovation that no one 100 years ago would have dreamed would be in existence. But we're going to be leveraging the same moral value set and applying it to trying to solve these problems. It is going to be extraordinarily difficult. Now, will we have to develop new value sets? I'm not sure. I'm not sure if we'll have to or even if we will be able to. Right? That is the magic. That's what's so important about culture and tradition is that it does not change. But then how is a society supposed to exist with innovation that doesn't adhere to that? I don't know. You hear all the time, back in my day, you would meet somebody at a pumpkin patch, and then that would be the person you fell in love with for the rest of your life. But now there's online dating. Beauty standards are changing rapidly as medical and cosmetic approaches are being advanced and making themselves more available to the public. What does it mean for beauty standards? What does it mean for our concept of self-love? And, because you're going to also be dealing with technology that gives you a huge volume of information. Right? I saw somebody talking about if you are talking about beauty, for example. This is something that people don't really think about. So if you're an individual, and huge shout out to one of our guests, we had a guest on talking about mental health, and she said something really interesting. She said that, one of the things that would be interesting if you got someone's phone and went on to their social media through their phone, because you'd see how their application is tailor fitted to them. And she said, well, some of the things that you can see is if the individual is single, you would see what kind of people they are interested in. And thinking about that is fascinating because before the advent of the smartphone, before the advent of social media platforms such as TikTok and Instagram and X, for example, you would only engage with individuals that you see on TV. But even before that, even before television, you would just engage with the people that you bumped into and that you saw and that you met. But now you are engaged with just so many different faces, so many different physiques that must warp, or I shouldn't even say warp because I feel like it has a negative tone or connotation to it, but that must change the lens in which individuals view beauty. That must change the lens in which people view or look at one another. It's just fascinating. Like someone, 200, 300 years ago that you thought was just the most gorgeous person you would ever see, you perhaps would see that type of beauty on an individual maybe three times in your entire life, right? Because you would have to actually physically be in the presence of that individual, right? Like think before television, right? Uh, you'd have artwork, but you'd have to be in the presence of that individual. Now you have thousands and thousands and thousands and thousands of people that you can just scroll through and just see and just witness. And that same person, that same level of beauty that you would only see one to three times in your entire life, you're seeing thousands of examples of that just within an hour or whatever, or a day or whatever. I mean, I don't know how people interact with social media, but that's just, or just the amount of information and the curation of information, how does that then impact you? I just think I just think it's very, very interesting to just really appreciate and understand how we operate into in today's, settings. It's just absolutely fantastic to really think about it. Well, here's another thing. If you are a parent and you have a young child, I mean, just to think about what the world will look like when they are older. If you don't think I'm right, watch an old movie. Now, what you'll find in that old movie is that like the people kind of look the same, the haircuts are different. I know I need a haircut. The haircuts are different. The clothes are pretty much the same. The cars, they're different, right? But kind of only thing with a screen on it is completely different now. Like if it involves a screen of some sort, it is entirely different now. If you have a child and y'all are, watching the oldies, the classics, that's the first thing that they'll recognize. Like, what, TVs look like that? Phones look like that? Why is the phone stuck on the wall? That doesn't make any sense. I know we all struggle with this. I hear conversations all the time. Very, very bright people um, talking about, well, things should be like this, and they need to remove phones from schools, or you shouldn't have access to all this stuff, and you shouldn't be doing this, and this is wrong, or this is. They could be right, but understand this that everything that we are saying is an effort to keep the human experience the same, despite the fact that the human experience in, exists in the context of rapid innovation. And it is not possible, from what I see, to keep that human experience the same in the face of rapid innovation. And that friction, that innovational friction, we're going to see manifest itself in a wide variety of ways. And it is going to be challenging. It's going to be fascinating. Obviously, we are going to dive into these issues constantly here on the Richard Watkins podcast. But I mean, yeah, these are just questions that we're just going to have to constantly ask. Here's another example. Movies. The way we make movies is changing dramatically. there's a desire that movies look the way they used to look, or movies aren't good anymore because they've changed, or they use this or they use that. This is all, kind of part of that innovational friction that is going to, in my estimation, always exist. Now, I do not believe, I don't believe that you can, I don't believe that you can either, I don't, I'm just trying to say this right. Please forgive me for stumbling over my words. I don't think that you can stop innovation, nor do I think you can slow innovation. It seems to be the case that innovation is almost a force of nature. I know that's not right. I know that's not appropriate, but it seems to be a force of nature despite the societal pushback. I imagine that when societies were moving from hunter gatherer to a more agricultural society via the agricultural revolution, I believe there were people who pushed back. I believe there were individuals who had so much invested in the way things had been done, but there was not, you couldn't stop it. The agricultural revolution happened. There had to have been individuals that pushed back against the industrial revolution. But the industrial revolution happened. Steam happened. Wasn't anything you could do to stop it. It happened. The agricultural revolution, the industrial revolution, it changed society forever. The things that we thought were important, we still kept many of those pieces, a lot of those pieces, but we were forced to change. Jobs were lost, jobs were changed, a lot of things changed. That's that innovational friction. And here we are today in the midst of a change that is far more drastic than the change from hunter gatherer to agriculture or the Industrial Revolution. We are standing in the midst of innovation, making it so there will be little need for us in the labor force, in the workforce. The roles that we play in our collective economies will be drastically different. This is currently happening. Where will we end up? There is no telling. But this is all part of what I would refer to as innovational friction. Will it be better? Maybe. Will it be worse? Maybe. I don't know. And it is also very, very difficult because they're like, let's have a conversation. It's very difficult to have a conversation because there's so much uncertainty, and the best laid plans in the present will often fail to meet the needs of the future because we just can't see what's around the corner. So I think it's always important, obviously, to have conversations. That's why we have this podcast. But to really start to have the language to describe what you're experiencing, right? That's that cultural lag, right? Where things are moving faster than culture can keep up. And there is that real situation of innovation ramping up. And there is that situation of innovational friction. Now, will you be able to ride the wave and benefit from it? Many people will. Will you have a hard time keeping up? Yeah, many people will have a hard time keeping up. But whether you are one of those people who have a hard time keeping up, just know that if you need help, if you need support, if you have questions, or if there's some topics that you want to have covered here on the Richard Watkins podcast, please just let us know. Remember that the Richard Watkins podcast is a proud production of the Science Policy Action Network, a consulting and research and engagement firm designed to address just these particular needs, these frictions in innovation, these innovational frictions. Visit SPAN at span-inc.org. And we cannot forget our sponsors, the folks who made this particular episode of the Richard Watkins podcast possible, All About You Realty. Thank you, All About You Realty, a locally owned boutique brokerage serving the triad and beyond, whether you're buying your first home, upgrading for more space, or preparing to sell. Their team is committed to guiding you every step of the way with expert agents across Greensboro, Winston-Salem, and High Point. They combine trusted experience with a people's first approach, because All About You Realty is truly all about you. I have been your humble host, Dr. Richard Watkins. This has been the Richard Watkins podcast. And listen, this is really apropos for today's episode. Our whole motto behind the Richard Watkins podcast is the future is not something to wait for, it is something to build. And until next time, take care of yourselves. Goodbye.